I'm Allie and this is my persuasive speech. What if I told you that I knew a way to save the state of Kansas $1.4 million? It wouldn't be through taxes or anything out of your own pocket. A lot of people would probably like the way that sounds until you tell them it would be repealing the death penalty. The death penalty is a very controversial and sensitive topic, not only for the people in the state of Kansas, but nationally and even internationally. My views on the death penalty are more on an economical standpoint than a moral standpoint. From the moral standpoint, people like the victim's family will seek revenge for people who have hurt their loved ones, and I like to look at it as more of an economical standpoint, like the cost and that kind of thing. There are actually a lot of misconceptions about the death penalty. A lot of people believe that the death penalty deters crime, which means that since there is such a high consequence for murdering someone, that they would not want to commit the crime because there's such a high punishment. According to most criminologists, they say that is not effective, and there's no study that proves that the capital punishment deters crime. In 2000, the state of Kansas homicide rate was 6.3 in 100,000 people, and that was the 13th highest in the nation. Other studies have been done on emotions that are linked to the death penalty. Anger is one of the most unpredictable emotions that a human can have. It just consumes you and it can take over, and you would do things that you normally wouldn't do. And so they've kind of linked the emotion anger, with crimes. Another reason why the death penalty should be repealed is the death penalty is final. There's no going back, there's no bringing that person back, and there's no room for error in the trial. There are 100,000 people have been released throughout American history that were later found innocent. For me, that number is extremely high. 100,000 people have appealed their court case and then later were found innocent because there was an error in their trial or something was found out to not be true. I also do not believe that in a capital murder case that the criminal's future should be decided by his peers. That's just everyday people being on the jury, listening to facts, and deciding that person's future. I feel in that kind of a case, it should be professionals who know what they're talking about. When you are on death row, you have the right to appeal your court case. That is one reason why it does cost so much. The average trial for a death penalty case is around 32 days, and a non-death trial is 9 days, and those are national averages across the country. The big headlines today in the United States are about the national debt and the recession that we are currently in, ways of solving it, and the ways to help bring money in. A capital punishment court case, the trial, the case, the execution, on average costs $1.26 million, whereas a non-capital punishment case costs $740,000. And the trial alone for a capital punishment case will cost $500,000. So if you think about it, every criminal who is under a capital punishment trial will get to appeal their case every time for around $500,000. So it actually costs 3 times as much money to appeal their case than it wouldn't, or to keep to have parole without, or life without parole. Excuse me. And in the state of Kansas, it costs $21,000 per year to have an inmate detained. Another reason why we should get rid of the death penalty in the state of Kansas is because it hasn't been used in a really long time. The last execution was June 22nd, 1965, when Gerald Ronald York and James D. Latham were executed for going on a murder spree. So the state of Kansas hasn't used the death penalty in 46 years, and I believe that is one reason why Kansas is very reluctant to use it. They don't want to use it. They haven't used it in a long time. And like I said, in the budget, every year the Kansas legislation sets aside $1.4 million per year for capital punishment. That is money that could be used for more productive things in the legislation. And recently, actually, the death penalty was up for repeal at the state capitol. However, it was voted unanimous to keep the death penalty in the state of Kansas. To me, that's actually a very sad thing, because there are actually 7 people who are currently on death row, and some of them have been there for decades, so they're just sitting there. And instead, our legislation decides it's better to cut people's jobs. Good citizens who have jobs, they decide to cut their jobs and cut school programs just to save money, when they could use the $1.4 million for something more productive. And I just think that there's something really wrong with that. I hope today from my speech that you take away a new fact, and maybe instead of looking at it from a moral standpoint, you will try and look at it at an economical standpoint and maybe change your mind about the death penalty in Kansas.